Now, it's time for Healing from Within with your host, Tony Valen.
Welcome to Healing from Within. I'm your host, Tony Valen. You can contact me, Tony, at TonyValen.com, or visit our website, healingfromwithin.net. Follow the show on Twitter, at TVHFW. The show is also available on iTunes and YouTube. Just search Healing from Within with Tony Valen, or look for the Tony Valen channel on YouTube. Joining us on today's show is pastor of the Temple of Spiritual Awareness, Suzanne Daniele-George. You can learn more about Reverend Suzanne and the church by going to templeofspirituala.wix.com. Like Suzanne and Temple of Spiritual Awareness on Facebook /Temple of Spiritual Awareness, and follow them on Twitter at Temple Spiritual. Reverend Suzanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's get started. What are your gifts and how did your journey begin?
I am an empathic intuitive, and my gifts, I think, first began when I was about 8 years old. I became very aware of my connection to the planet, to the earth, to the trees, to the moon, to the elements, and also very acutely aware of the emotions and feelings of others. And so I noticed at a young age that when people were sad, I became very sad. And when people were happy, I became very happy. And although I couldn't put my finger on it or express exactly what was going on with me, I came to know as an adult that was the beginning of my journey.
Very interesting. And I can definitely identify with that because I also had that same problem. I felt like I had no control over my emotions. Mm-hmm. Little did I know it was someone else's that I was feeling. Tell us a little more about the Temple of Spiritual Awareness.
Sure. The Temple of Spiritual Awareness is a relatively new church. We started meeting together at the end of March of this year, 2015. And I need to turn my phone off.
No problem.
Bad girl. And we are currently meeting in my home, in my living room. We started off with a congregation of about 12 to 15 people, which is very small. And it has since grown to nearly 86 people have visited or attend sporadically the Temple of Spiritual Awareness. So if everybody shows up at one time, we're in big trouble.
Yeah.
But we offer services on Thursday evenings and Sunday mornings, and they consist of healing, Reiki, and hands-on healing that sometimes lasts anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on our participation. And then on Sunday, there's a brief message or lesson that is presented by me or a guest speaker, a meditation at each service, and then messages from Spirit, which don't necessarily always come from me or from other mediums. We've found that recently many of our congregants are feeling moved by Spirit to share what exactly is going on with them, messages for individuals, messages for the group, or just sharing their experiences in their own personal development and spiritual growth.
Yes. And even though I know you just started meeting March of 2015, I know you've been a pastor for quite a while. Tell us a little more about your history and where you started.
Sure. I started off actually in the ministry as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and dedicated myself to God and to His service. And I was affiliated with that organization for nearly 20 years. Having left there and found that it no longer served me, I attached myself again to my father's church, which was the Temple of Light and the College of Metaphysical Studies in Clearwater. During that time, which was about 10 years ago, my dad and I reconciled a lot of the differences that we had in our ideology and in our spiritual paths. When that happened, he asked me to take over his ministry when he decided to retire and move on, and when his then wife, who is now his widow, was in control of the college and the Temple of Light Spiritual Center. During the course of that time, I studied metaphysics, got my associate's degree, my master's degree, and then my doctorate in theology through the College of Metaphysical Studies. I was also awarded a Doctorate of Divinity because of my work that I did with the YMCA in South Tampa as a chaplain with them, and the outreach work that I promoted through the Y and through the College of Metaphysical Studies. So that was a real honor to have that happen. Mm-hmm. And then was also assigned the opportunity to serve as the Assistant Executive Director of the College of Metaphysical Studies and New Awareness Ministries International. I was there for quite some time. There was a shift in the way that they wanted to do things and the way that things were being done. My stepmother at one point decided that she was going to change the corporation, and she took me off of those papers. When that happened, I resigned my position as pastor, and at that point I had been serving as a pastor for just shy of 2 years at the Temple of Light, and really enjoyed that work. I got to know a lot of really wonderful, wonderful people, and then there was some kind of political hostile takeover of the corporation, and they locked us out of the church. When that happened, Tony, it was a very interesting thing, because my thinking was that I would just move into something different in the secular world, and that perhaps my time as a pastor and as a minister, especially for that organization, nevertheless any other organization, had passed. You know, that maybe Spirit had something else for me to do. Mm-hmm. And the individuals that were there that day insisted on staying and hearing that last sermon on the sidewalk, and then taking me out to breakfast, and we spoke, and they were absolutely insistent upon retaining me still as a pastor, and that somehow Spirit would work out the situation so that we could have group meetings and get together. They didn't feel comfortable going back to the Temple of Light. And so over the next couple of weeks, we put together some ideas and threw some things around, and we ended up here at the Temple of Spiritual Awareness. They picked the name and picked the pastor,
right? Mm-hmm.
and I offered the location, and so since then I've been serving here at the Temple of Spiritual Awareness. So I have been a pastor, a minister for over 30 years, a pastor for 2.5 years, serving this particular congregation, because in truth, the congregation just shifted from the Temple of Light to the Temple of Spiritual Awareness.
I know how those people feel, because I just so happened to meet you when you were at the Temple of Light, and there was something very special and moving about you that made me go seek you over at Temple of Light, and then I realized you weren't there anymore. And then I started searching and found you again. So there I am with you again, stalking you.
And I'm so glad that you stalked me. It's wonderful to have you affiliated with our congregation, and your energy is amazing, and you have been incredibly generous to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. It's also my staff. My producer, Larry, is also very, very, he's a big cheerleader of you guys. I love that. He wonderful. Is. So for people that don't know, do you have a short kind of way or an easy way of explaining the difference between a regular church and a metaphysical church? What would you say the difference is?
I would say that the difference is metaphysics is not a religious study. Metaphysics is a philosophy, an understanding of the unseen world, or an an examination of the unseen world as opposed to the physical world. And so a lot of the metaphysicians that are involved in this church have their own religious practices. So there are Catholics, there are Jews, there are Buddhists, there are Christians, and they put aside their doctrine and dogma to share in this particular expression of spirituality.
Yeah, and you said that you started this with your father. He started the Temple of Light. So let me ask you, even though you're not at the Temple of Light, I know you continue to carry the torch. And how are you doing this?
I'm doing that because a lot of the things that I teach and the lessons that I offer on Sunday, especially, we also teach classes and workshops here at the Temple of Spiritual Awareness. But all of those are based in part on the lessons and the classes that I learned while I was part of the ministry and going through my educational process there as a minister. I'm still an ordained minister through New Awareness Ministries International, so that is where I retain my ordination papers. And I have a great amount of respect for especially the research and the body of work that my father spent most of his adult life putting together for the College of Metaphysical Studies. A lot of that, in particular theology and spiritual studies, are what I share with the people that we meet with and the individuals that we meet with. So in a large way, aside from my own bizarre thinking that comes into play, those ideas that my father instilled in me and through my study are exactly what people are gaining insight from and benefit from here at the Temple of Spiritual Awareness.
Can you give us an example of what that would be?
Sure. In particular, what we do is we use very implementable spirituality. And this is one of the things that my father was a huge proponent of, is having a spirituality that not just is a matter of ritual, where we go on Christmas Day to church, or we say our prayers every night, but an actual living faith, an actual living spiritual practice that can be incorporated in our everyday thoughts, in our everyday actions, in our interactions with other human beings, in the way that we think and the way that we think about ourselves as well as others. And so a lot of the things that I share have to do with that and self-examination that is emphasized in a lot of the coursework that I studied at the college. One of the courses that I studied in particular is The Alchemy of Balance, which was not written by my father. Actually, it was written by somebody else. But it was one of the courses that I found especially useful in my interactions and self-analysis. And that particular course had a lot of exercises that you did and study that you did that gave you an opportunity to examine certain kinds of behaviors and thoughts and feelings and reactions and actions that we have with other people so that we can change those. And it's not unlike, science of mind. Change your mind, change your life. And when you're aware of the things that you do, it makes it easier for you to change those things. And so what I have done is taken my own spiritual experience and ancient wisdom and melded that with a lot of the ideas that I had when I was in the College of Metaphysical Studies and shared them with my father. And so it's a kind of a unique brand of spiritual self-help.
Right.
So, and I think it's very poignant and very popular and very easy for us to hear at this particular time. People tend to be less interested in dogma and doctrine and offended with proselytization, where people are saying, oh, you should do this or you should do that, and much more open and receptive to the idea of examining themselves, seeing how they feel about certain kinds of ideas and thoughts, and then implementing them and using them to see if they actually work in their life. I had a friend not too long ago that had said to me, what they do when someone says, oh, well, that's very interesting, but I happen to be this particular religious bent. You say, that's wonderful. How is that working for you? And that is one of our mantras. How is that working for you? How is your faith? How is your spirituality working for you? If it's working for you, then you are definitely on the right path. If it's not working for you, then maybe that's something that you want to examine and see if you can implement and include some ideas and some thoughts that will work for you.
Yeah, living authentically instead of out of habit.
This is Suzanne Daniele-George here on behalf of Healing from Within with Tony Valen on Blog Talk Radio. To learn more about me and my church, go to templeofspirituala.wix.com. Like me on Facebook at the Temple of Spiritual Awareness and follow me on Twitter at A Temple Spiritual. We have opened a GoFundMe account to establish a permanent home for our community-oriented ministry. This unique ministry is an outgrowth of more than 30 years of selfless effort to establish a foundation for spiritual development and personal awareness. Inspired and encouraged by Dr. Paul Daniel, my father and mentor, who founded the College of Metaphysical Studies, I have chosen to carry the torch and continue and evolve many of his teachings to further the great work he spent so many years creating. We are a small church but growing, and now number 86 members in a short 6 months of our meeting. Please review our Facebook page and website at the Temple of Spiritual Awareness. Visit our GoFundMe account and help us to help others. You can find our GoFundMe account on our website, Facebook, and Twitter. As a part of our campaign in finding a new home for our followers, I have commissioned an art installment that will be permanently displayed in our new home. The art is of a tree. With your donations, a part of the tree will be formed with your name. For each $5 donation, a leaf. For a $10 donation, a stem. For $25, a branch. For $50, a part of the trunk. And for a $100 donation, a root. Those that make a donation of $100 will also receive a signed copy of my book, Evolution of Awareness, Tools for Spiritual Evolution and Lessons for Personal Reflection. The sole purpose of our ministry is to build community that celebrates our journey on life's path, both the internal journey and the external journey through knowledge, encouragement, compassion, and community outreach. This ministry reaches not just those who actively attend meetings and services, it also touches those who connect to us online, where we share our lessons, experiences, and meditations. Now all we need is a permanent home, a place to continue to grow and serve and expand the work that we do. As a symbol of your donation, our tree will be a permanent reminder of your kindness and generosity. GoFundMe is a great way to support not just our church, but the process of spiritual and personal growth in our community. Again, to learn more about our efforts, you can go to templeofspirituala.wix.com. Like me on Facebook at the Temple of Spiritual Awareness and follow me on Twitter at Temple Spiritual. Support and be the change you wish to see in the world. This is Suzanne Daniele-George, pastor of the Temple of Spiritual Awareness, here on behalf of Healing from Within with Tony Valen on Blog Talk Radio, airing Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central.
This is Tony Valen of Healing from Within. You can contact me, Tony, at TonyValen.com, or visit our website, healingfromwithin.net. Follow the show on Twitter at TVHFW. The show is also available on iTunes and YouTube. Just search Healing from Within with Tony Valen or look for the Tony Valen channel on YouTube. We're talking to our guest, Suzanne Daniele-George. You can learn more about Reverend Suzanne by going to templeofspirituala.wix.com. Like Suzanne and Temple of Spiritual Awareness on Facebook /Temple of Spiritual Awareness and follow her on Twitter at Temple Spiritual. What makes the Temple of Spiritual Awareness different from other metaphysical churches? And more specifically, what I'm asking is not so much your input into the church, but the people that attend, the people that you come across every day.
Well, one of the things that I have been told that makes it different is the opportunity to practice what it is that you're feeling and experiencing in your spiritual journey. And that's huge because, unfortunately, what happens in many metaphysical churches or any church is that you have to be a member. You have to be a long-time contributor. You have to be committed to be able to participate in services, so to speak. And I think part of it is the location of the church at the moment because it's in my living room. It's casual. It's comfortable. It's intimate. But also, my thinking is that individuals should have the opportunity to express themselves spiritually, regardless of whether it's their first time visiting your church or whether it's, that they've been there since the first day that you've been giving services. And so we have a number of individuals who have gotten their Reiki certifications that heal and practice their healing, new healers, new experience for them in sharing what's going on with them. And the same with messages. We have individuals, as I had mentioned, that are giving messages that are just now receiving information and open and becoming awakened for the first time in their life. And they're so excited. It's very emotional. And as I said, it's very intimate. And it's a very family kind of feeling group. People interact with each other in a different way in someone's home than they do in a building, in a church. Everybody comes to church, they talk, they visit, and they leave. We have fellowship, so people stay. We have coffee and cake and lunch on Sunday after service. And so it's become a friendship instead of a service.
Yes, me being one of the attendees, I can definitely see that. Reverend Suzanne, one thing I want to do is I want to back up a little because there's a question that I wanted to ask, and for whatever reason, I skipped it, but I want to come back to it. Okay. You said you went from Jehovah Witness to Metaphysical. That is such a big difference. What happened there? What happened? I guess is what I'm asking.
Years and years ago, when my father first opened the college, I had actually been going to the Temple of Love and Healing with him, and eventually that's where he was ordained, and we kind of split off. I moved to the other side of Florida, Titusville, and he stayed here, and he opened the College of Metaphysical Studies. I actually had someone knock on my door, and I was alone in a strange place. I didn't know anybody, and it was a woman who was close to my age, with children close to my age, and I am a great respecter of a book. There's nothing that touches my heart like a free book. And so she actually came to my house and gave me a couple of books that were publications from the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, and I enjoyed them. I really did. And it was then that I had read the Bible, but I started studying the Bible with her, and it intrigued me. Over that period of time, I was young. I was impressionable. Not that that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. And I wanted a form of faith that was devotion-based. And for me at that time, that was the perfect place to be. The community of friends and brothers and sisters that I shared that journey with became like a family to me. It really is a society into itself, and I'm blessed to have had that experience, and that's how I view that. When I left, it was during a divorce from my ex-husband and a crisis of self-awareness. In general, I have always felt that there was something more. I was a bit of a pariah, even when I was a Jehovah's Witness, and expressed myself very loudly on occasion in disagreement and argument over scriptures that I didn't feel were being applied in a way that was clear and concise. And so those ideas grew towards the end of that path. When something no longer serves you, you let it go. Yeah. And I prayed very hard. I still have that ritual behavior of prayer that I'm very, very stuck in, and very focused on, and believing that it has an incredible power in people's lives. And in my life, it did, because I prayed for someone to come into my life that would support me and serve my journey, my soul's journey. And I am super blessed to have a husband now for the last 8 years who does exactly that. And my mind shifted. A lot of ideas that I had for a very long time started to surface. I shared a lot of this with my dad. I went through counseling for a whole year with him in trying to re-find myself, because I had become selfless, truly selfless. I lost who I was, what I thought, what I liked, what I didn't like, and I was able to rediscover that in myself, and then turn that into an opportunity to serve. And it was an incredible blessing for me. It really was. It gave me the opportunity to not live my life vicariously through my husband, but to actually be my own person, be my most authentic self, be my most transparent me.
Right. And that's so wonderful. And you giving me the answer to that question, I kind of realized that was probably a necessary step in your lessons to bring you to where you are now, because that's exactly the way you run your church now, like family, and you've become so close with everyone, and nothing is off limits, within reason, of course. I understand.
Actually, nothing is off limits. So yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I teach that quite often because I do special counseling for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and I tell them, quite often when things happen in our life and we don't really understand them, we get confused and we get angry. We get angry. We feel like we've wasted our time. But if we own our experiences, really own them, even the mistakes that we make, whatever choices that we make, they become a powerful thing for us. They don't have to be a negative thing. They can turn into a very positive energy that we own, that we embrace, and that we can use moving forward. And that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. The next question I'm going to ask you is, and I hope if you're not ready, I understand, but I'm going to ask you, can you please tell our listeners about the GoFundMe account that you set up for a permanent home for the church?
I would be happy to. Our GoFundMe account is attached to our Facebook page and also our website. It is intended to help us to find a permanent place for our church, because currently we have on an average about 20 to 30 people showing up in my living room and overflowing now into my library. And so we need a place that we can call home, that we can expand our church and serve more people through. And that is what the GoFundMe account was set up for, to better serve our community and to give the individuals that are currently visiting our church and that are hoping to visit our church a place to go to where they can feel comfortable.
Wonderful. And are you still doing the art of tree?
Yes, we will be. Once we have a permanent place, we will be doing an art installation that will reflect the donations and gifts that have generously been given to us through the GoFundMe account. So for each part of the tree, depending on the level of donation that you get, your name will be attached to that. And so it'll be a reminder for each and every individual that comes to our church that this is a place that was given to us by the generous donations of those that believed in us and wanted to serve not just us, but community at large.
Are you also going to still be offering a copy of your book?
For each donation over $100, I will be happy to offer to anyone that would like one a copy of my book, and I'll sign it for them myself.
Wonderful. And again, you can learn more about those efforts by going to templeofspirituala.wix.com or go to their Facebook or their Twitter page as well. You're also an accomplished author. I just mentioned you wrote a book, The Evolution of Awareness. Tell us about the book.
The book is a collection of lessons that I have given over the last 6 years at both the Temple of Light and here at the Temple of Spiritual Awareness, and a number of poems and some commentaries, some thoughts about primarily an opportunity to reflect through the lessons on our own spiritual evolution and our journey of awareness, because I believe that every individual is in a place where they often do not reflect on those things, and sometimes with a thought or a tool to initiate that or to aggravate that even. It gives us an opportunity to think of things a little bit differently and look at our journey a little bit differently, or add some wisdom to our evolutionary process. The book was written and inspired not just by my journey, but my awareness and observation that spirituality has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. Oh. And that and through my doctorate in theology, I have also learned that spirituality continues to change and will continue to change along with religious understanding and even conservative and traditional schools of religious understanding, more slowly, but they do change. And so they change to meet the needs of people. So we really need to know what our needs are and to observe that those things do change, because we live in a changing world.
What was your inspiration for the book?
Well, primarily my journey and my awareness of the change that is occurring in the world today. I know that one of the things that sticks out in my mind that is a real point of awareness was when the Pope had mentioned the Hellfire doctrine publicly and said that the Catholic Church will no longer and has never truly been embracing the idea of teaching a hellfire doctrine, that it doesn't appear in the scriptures, that it's not a scriptural law, it's not an understanding of love. And that blew me away, because it was one of the first times that we saw in a public way a very traditional institution of theology say, you know what, this is what we're saying on some level, but this is not what we believe. And this ideology needs to be outed. We need to say that this is something that we don't believe and that we don't espouse. And let's move forward from there, saying that we embrace and include all people. And now with our new Pope, we can see even further steps in advancement in the Catholic Church in a public way.
Right.
I think most people could say that. And so this is a perfect example of what the inspiration for my book was, because when we see this in a large way in the media and the masses can witness this change in the thinking of something that is so ancient and so orthodox, then certainly we know that that is filtered all through theology and our spiritual practices. And it also encourages us to change. It encourages us to examine the things that we believe and the things that we do and find out whether they're authentic or whether they're rote.
What do you mean when you're talking about hellfire doctrine?
So the Catholic Church, from the time, I went to an all-girls Catholic school, so confession. But what they would teach is that if you were bad, that you would burn in an everlasting fire of hell. And so, if you were good, you went to heaven, and if you were bad, you went to hell. Well, this isn't a scriptural idea. This is not an idea that's validated in either the Hebrew scriptures or the Christian Greek scriptures. And so when, one of the great things about the world that we live in today is we all read. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So we can pick up the book and read it for ourselves. And so the Pope has said, well, this was never our intention to teach this doctrine this way, because this is not contained in the scriptures with what we base our faith on. And so that's where that came from. It was a miscommunicated idea about something in order to control people in an unnecessary way.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And in your book, you talk about mankind's desire to explore their relationship with God. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little more about that, because I found that very interesting.
Well, one of the things that I found recently, especially in the metaphysical community, and I recently have had the opportunity to expand my association with different individuals in the metaphysical community, is that there is a large difference even in metaphysical thinking, especially in metaphysical thinking, because we incorporate so many different ideas into our philosophy. But to explore how we feel about God, whether we view God in a energy way, in a pantheistic way, where God is the universe, God is creation, whether we have a personal relationship with God, where we call God by a specific name like Jehovah, or whether we understand God as a male, female energy, mother, father, God. We offer that prayer in our church all the time. Mm-hmm. Or creator. Are we deist? Are we theist? Do we know what we think about God? Do we know what kind of relationship we want to have with God and what our expectations are for God, and what part of that affects us in a personal way? So often we talk about the indwelling God, or the still quiet voice, or Holy Spirit. So what is our connection? What is our personal connection to that energy, to that divineness in the universe? And I think that sometimes when we're religious, as opposed to spiritual, we go through our practice and we're separated from our relationship with God. God is our Father. He looks over us. He tells us what to do. We listen to him as loving children, but we don't really relate to God. And in our exploration of that spiritual sense, the divine being, the universal intelligence, the creator of all that is, we get an opportunity to connect in a personal way and understand our role in the universe.
You talked about metaphysics. It's different and changing. Where do you see metaphysics going? Where do you see it evolving?
It's funny. One of the things that I say quite often when I talk about my book, or I talk about metaphysical thinking in relationship to like some of the metaphysical schools that are out there now, is that years and years ago, 30 years ago when my father established the College of Metaphysical Studies, it was kind of woo-woo. It was a woo, that's kind of, some very far out thinking, some very strange thinking, very hippie-ish. So that was the thinking that went around metaphysics. And now metaphysics has come onto its own. I mean, today, unfortunately, we heard the very sad news about Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
And he was one of my mentors. I have read so many of his books and listened to his tapes and his lessons, and he has definitely inspired me. But this is just one person in the metaphysical community that has made a very large personal contribution to, I believe, the American spiritual consciousness. And so Oprah has done the same, and Deepak has done the same, and Eckhart has done the same. So now it's not woo-woo anymore. Now it's mainstream. So I like to say the New Age movement has become old age.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
really not. It doesn't have the kind of strange attachment that it had at one time. I think that people acknowledge that there is a significant benefit to understanding ourselves and understanding our relationship to the unseen world.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it amazes me that every time I meet with new guests for the show and whatnot, the background, that everyone is actually, and I don't want to offend anyone, but the people today are like really educated and have really all these degrees and whatnot and studies and whatnot. So it goes to show that exactly what you just said, that metaphysics is actually a real thing, and it's not just woo-woo like they used to think of that. In your research of all the religions and everything, and I'm referring to modern Christianity, pagans, Buddhists, what do you think are the similarities, or did you find any similarities?
I found them all to be similar. We are all reaching out to have a personal relationship with the divine, to understand our soul's journey, where we're going, how we fit in, and how we best can live our lives, and mostly to be happy. We all want to be happy. Everybody wants to be happy. And so all these religious structures are designed to help us to find ways to live our lives in the happiest way that we can, contributing to the larger picture, to society as a whole, and being a pebble in the pool, so to speak. And I have to be honest, I have studied maybe just a handful of religions that don't espouse that kind of ideology, either in their small sect of community, if they are closed societies, or in a large way in that they are inclusive of all ideologies and respectful of all religious studies and paths. So it seems to me that in the metaphysical community, the reason that we study all these different kinds of religions is to take bits and pieces of them that resonate with us, that make sense to us. The rules and the understandings, or the doctrines and the dogmas of those traditional religions that kind of feel comfortable to us, and we create what I like to call our Frankenstein's monster, and piece together something that looks like a Buddhist, pagan, Christian, Zoroastrian creature.
Right.
And then we look for other people that have similar monsters to ours to spend time with, or different monsters than ours, so that we can try and understand them. So it's very seldom that I have met a metaphysician that espouses one particular ritual above all others and has decided that way does not resonate with them. Quite often it is a conglomerate of a bunch of different ideas mashed together, because we're seekers. And we really want to understand and kind of incorporate all the good that we can find in the traditional religions into our metaphysical philosophy, because they are the same. They resonate and they vibrate and they send the same message.
That is so true. So in asking you this next question, this is just in reference to what you feel, not necessarily what you teach. Mm-hmm. But who or what is God to you?
I would say to me, God is a masculine, feminine energy that has created the entire universe. So I believe in a creator. Mm-hmm. And that energy not only created the physical universe, but it created the unseen universe and resonates through each and every individual and life that is created and collected together in all that we know. So what we see, what we don't see, and then beyond that, there's galaxies upon galaxies and universes out there for us to explore yet. All of this comes from one particular source. That is my understanding, and that is my belief. And so not only are we connected to that source, but each and every individual that we run into, good and bad, behavior-wise, is also connected to that source.
Very interesting. So, do you think of God as it's their own individual, or do you think He's more like a energy throughout everyone?
I have a more pantheistic view of God. I believe it is an energy that resonates through all of creation. But I do believe that it comes from one particular point, that it issues from one particular source. So I know that sometimes in the metaphysical world, we talk about our own godhood, our understanding we are God and we create our own universe, we create our own experiences and our own reality. And that is not an ideology that I'm comfortable with, in that I did not create this incredible universe. I did not create the universes and galaxies beyond, but I do co-create with the energy that resides within me, my experience and my reality and my response to anything that goes on in my life. And in exploring your own spirituality, what did you find was the most important component of living a truly authentic life? Being honest, being truly honest with yourself. You know, looking at your feelings and looking at your experience and being fair and owning your part in the decisions and the choices that you make, and then moving forward through that into the next moment in which we live. So yeah, being honest. Honesty
to yourself mostly, and then to others, right?
Absolutely.
In our final moments, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions so that our listeners, will get to know you on a deeper level. What is the most important to focus on as we go through our journey on this physical plane?
Your personal relationship with the divine is the most important thing that you can work on in this physical plane, because once you're living from the inside out, your experience on this plane changes, as opposed to allowing the external things that happen in your life to affect you internally.
If you could change one thing about your life, what would it be?
That's a tough one.
It is.
It's really hard. Okay. If I could change one thing in my life, what would it be? You know what? I cannot think of anything that I would change, only because it has brought me to wherever I am right now. And I think that if I could change anything, I would have maybe woken up a little bit faster. Maybe evolved a little bit quicker, because our time in the physical world is short and valuable. So, maybe if I had awakened a little bit quicker and been truer and more honest with myself sooner, I could have moved through my journey a little bit faster to get to where I'm going and to where I am, because it's not done. So, but that would be the only thing that I would change.
Wow. And finally, what is next for you and the church?
Well, we talk about that a lot. So we are in the process of incorporating and trying to make a decision about whether we're going to do a sole corporation or a standard corporation through the state of Florida. And then, once we establish a permanent home for our church, we'll be primarily doing a lot of outreach. One of the things that that our church, which is the people that belong to our group, is concerned with is serving our community and looking for a way to serve our community fully. Identifying some needs, identifying groups that have like-mindedness, and we're doing that to some degree now. We've reached out to the People's Spiritualist Church, and we're helping them with their Raise the Roof project. We're going down there on the 12th and helping them with some manpower issues to prepare for their new roof. And we've reached out to the Faces of Courage Cancer Camp, and we do some volunteer work with them. But we'd like to do something even more. And I think that the more that we want to do is educate people and give them the opportunity to advance their spiritual journey.
Reverend Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I really want to thank you for giving up your time.
Thank you, Tony. It's been an absolute thrill being here with you and talking to you. I enjoy your company so much.
Oh, thank you. Our thanks to Reverend Suzanne Daniele-George. You can learn more about Reverend Suzanne by going to templeofspirituala.wix.com. Like Suzanne and the Temple of Spiritual Awareness on Facebook /Temple of Spiritual Awareness, and follow her on Twitter @Temple Spiritual. You are listening to Healing from Within with Tony Valen here on Blog Talk Radio, airing Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central. Visit our website, healingfromwithin.net, and contact me directly, Tony@TonyValen.com. Please follow the show on Twitter @TVHFW. The show is also available on iTunes and YouTube. Just search Healing from Within with Tony Valen, or look for the Tony Valen channel on YouTube. Thank you so much, and love and light from all of us here at Healing from Within.